This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon. I almost said evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another one of our speaker series. Today is the first day of June, which means we made that out of May. So that's pretty good. What's even better, though, is we're here with Donna Ward today, who's the founder and lead educator for Miss Donna's Place, a friendly educational and nurturing environment for pre-K and kindergarten kids. Through nature and art and exploration, Miss Donna's Place is an environment that fosters the total child through a commitment of hands, heart, and head on each child. She's a certified teacher in K through 12 in science, has her bachelor's in science and biology, and her master's in therapy and counseling. She's taught in both middle and high school before having her children, whom she then schooled for many years. Once she became, once then she began Miss Donna's Place, and over 18 years ago, she's turned back from creating an atmosphere of curiosity and appreciation for nature. And here to talk about outdoor education and nature-based learning is Miss Donna Ward. Thanks for coming and doing this. This is great.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.
So I guess to hearing your introduction, I just have to say that when I first started homeschooling my kids, which was back when they were very young, I really saw an aspect of what they were getting from the education that I was providing them, which I wasn't really expecting. And that was a very self-guided interest that they would have in certain subjects. And you know, being the teacher that I was, and then having my 5 kids, there was a part of me that kind of wanted to stick with the curriculum, and I thought that that was kind of the way to go. But once I got involved with a very progressive homeschooling community down in North Carolina in Chapel Hill, I realized that the best way to really foster their education was through really finding out what their interests were and kind of allowing myself to help guide them to, you know, fostering that. So that was really my turn on to what homeschooling and especially outdoor education was providing, because I found that when we were outside, whether it was frog hunting or looking for salamanders or just going for nature walks or whatever, there was so much to be gained from just being outside in that environment. So when I moved to Massachusetts and my kids started to finally go to public school, my daughter was, I think, in 4th grade for her first, you know, time going to school, and I was very kind of worried about, you know, if they were going to be up to par, if they were going to be on the same reading level, and you know, lo and behold, even if they weren't, they caught up very quickly. But I think the biggest thing that I found with all of my kids is that there was a level of self-confidence about themselves and a level of just an appreciation for outdoors and a self-regulated kind of manner to them that they far exceeded what I was seeing with their peers once they were in public school. So when I realized that, I thought, you know, I was going to maybe go back into teaching, Miss Donna's Place just kind of started spontaneously and very just, you know, from the roots of the earth in my little town and my little home. And it just grew exponentially, rapidly into a full-blown program where now I have, you know, pre-K kids, after school kids, you know, summer program. And I know that what the parents appreciate the most about it is the fact that we are outside, you know, doing things that I think probably many of my families don't want to be doing with their kids, which is turning over rocks and getting muddy and getting dirty. And we do a lot of artwork as well, but a lot of our art is focused on things that we find in nature. And I just really get a true sense from the children that they just really enjoy it. They love being outside. They love, you know, doing what every child should be doing, and that's, you know, just enjoying the time outside and getting dirty, muddy, and wet, and just having, you know, just what the growth can come from is just awesome. So my piece of property that I ended up moving to once Miss Donna's Place kind of got off and running is a 9-acre piece of property now with a lot of wetlands. So my sons, who also, I think through their homeschooling, one of them became very into woodworking at a very young age. We didn't have a television when they were growing up. So without a television in the house, that kind of really fostered them to take some of their interests that they might, you know, have inside the house a little more deeply, whether it be whittling, or then it became woodworking and all that. So one of my sons built me a very elaborate nature trail And so we have, we spend lots of time out in the nature trail looking for salamanders and turtles and frogs in the wetlands. And then I have a mud kitchen where the kids have a working water pump, and they make their stews out of cattails and acorns. And all the math that we do, it kind of focuses around gathering the acorns or the nuts, and measuring out how much of one thing we're going to put into the pot and stir it up. We also have animals, which is another big component. We have goats and chickens and rabbits, and the kids learn to take care of all those animals, which I think is another very important aspect of having them learn to care for things other than just themselves. And so, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I absolutely love it. And I can't kind of wait to get back into my summer program and get the kids back here, and I know they can't wait either. So that's kind of a little bit of my background and why I just think everything is so important for kids just to be outside.
That's great. When you mentioned when you first started like homeschooling your kids, so to speak, and you were surprised at how they were reacting, do you see that same kind of reaction to the other kids who you have in your school program now?
Absolutely. I definitely will say, a lot of the children that I have in my program, these are all pre-kindergarten age kids.
Mm-hmm.
They also go to other schools, and they go to schools where it's a little more academic. And, I know that some of them are not ready for the ABCs. They're not ready to be sitting at a table and having to, just trace over letters or whatever. And it's my belief that kids at that age shouldn't be doing that. They should be outside. And I can only relate it to, my own children when I was homeschooling them. They didn't want to be sitting there doing math pages, but if you're creative, you can get those same kinds of skills, put across to them, and they can learn them in an outdoor setting where just the hands being used and the heart being felt and their mind being not just, one little memorization or whatever. It makes it so much more real and so much more ingrained in them when they're taught in that kind of an environment. So I absolutely see it in even my students now, where the parents say to me they can't stand to go to their normal traditional preschool. They just can't wait to come to your program, and they're learning the same stuff. It's just that I do it in such a different kind of creative way, which is really what nature has to offer all of us anyway. So, having kids be outside and with good, educational teachers, and that, it would be tenfold what I think they could get in a normal classroom setting.
Yeah, so you would also, yeah, so like, I guess considering the important experiences that children should have in these settings, like with nature and animals and involving peace and tranquility, I think I think that's way more uh more entertaining than a book, but
Right.
which they'll get to later in life.
Right. And honestly, I don't know if you're familiar, with a lot of the research that's being done now, but the Europeans have known this for a long time, that kids should be kept outside. The more that you can keep them outdoors and kind of keep them even away from the traditional skills, the better off they're going to be. And if when they're ready, they'll let you know that they're ready. I mean, all kids are thriving on wanting to learn. They want to know how to read. They want to do all the things that adults do. But if you give it to them in their own framework and with their own interests kept in mind, when they are ready to have it, they're gonna just explode with it. And so there's no need to be forcing kids or thinking that a kid is going to be left behind because they don't know their ABCs yet. It's, if they have a good nurturing environment, it's all going to happen, and they're going to be so much, more self-confident and self-aware, and just having, the nature component involved in it, that whole resource on itself is going to be, an amazing thing for them to always rebound back to, just to go back into nature for a little solace or a little understanding or a little peace and quiet.
Yeah, that's great. And I love how you mentioned like the other model, like I think the Scandinavians or the Danish in particular,
Yeah.
and they were
Yeah.
always talking about the more child-centered approach.
Yes.
And then the more humanistic beliefs, I'd say, than
Yes.
than just pen pencil. Here you go, kid. Here's the number
Right.
one. Yeah.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm reading a book right now called Spiritual Parenting, which I heard a woman speak about on NPR a while ago, and it's all about how there's really a lot of research being done now on if children have a spiritual connection to something, that that having that little extra component in life is what will really help have them have such resources for when times get rough, or when they're troubled by something, or as they get older, whether it be bullying or just having a sense of who they are and a groundedness. And that having this foundation is something that you have to start at a young age. And if you don't start it at a young age, it's kind of like it's very, very difficult to teach them later on. And one of the biggest ways that you can create this spiritual guidance is through nature. And it's one of the best ways to do it, in my mind, because nature is a part of our lives forever, whether it be wanting to garden or wanting to go hiking or taking care of the earth. I mean, we need this now more than ever for our planet to be healing and to be saving it. So the nature component, I think, is something that is just so important. And I would recommend this book highly for all of your readers, The Spiritual Parenting.
Spiritual parenting. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll type that in the chat box for people to look it up.
Yeah, I have it in my bedroom. I should have brought it out and showed it to you all, which maybe I can do. I can give it to Kira or you later on. But yeah, it's a wonderful book.
Thank you. We had a question from the audience, which I also kind of giggled at. How do you manage with the parents who are worried about like the elements, so to speak, whether it be cold or poison ivy, or maybe an animal nipping at their fingers, or the ticks or something? How does that work out normally?
So, obviously the ticks have been a big concern over these past couple of years. And it's one of the reasons why I have my chickens. So my chickens are great tick eaters. Obviously it's not something that we can necessarily prevent from happening. And I just tell the parents, you should do a diligent tick check every night. I use an organic tick spray on all the kids when they're here. So if we go out into the woods, I will spray them down with this tick spray. Yes, some of them are going to get them. But again, if parents are diligent about it, you should be able to find them. I think, they say, at least with the deer ticks, 24 to 48 hours of them being on you is, an okay time frame. So I think most people can find them if their kids have them within that time frame if they're looking. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because we try to think of all the ways to inform parents working at New England Base Camp, and I know Kira has a bunch of lint rollers for their clothes to make sure that the ticks might stick to them. And I always used to giggle because I've never seen the lint roller thing done before, but it makes perfect sense. We try to warn as many as we can. Sorry,
just one other thing. One of the things that I find that a lot of parents, initially when they come to my program, like we have my nature trail is about a 2 foot wide boardwalk, and there's water underneath it. And the parents are always like, oh my God, what if they fall off and they get wet? I'm like, what if they fall off and get wet? I mean, that's actually what kids will say to me years when they come back to visit. Miss Donna, I remember when I fell off the nature trail and I got wet? And I'm like, yes, I do remember that. But, kids need to have experiences like that. We can't, we do them an injustice to think that we're going to be protecting them from all the things that are out there, whether they fall or trip or, even get a tick bite. I mean, yeah, but we can do our best for those kinds of things. But in general, kids need to have, falls and, things like that. So that kind of got off the subject a little bit, but anyway.
No, that's fine. Another question from our audience. Have you ever heard of Tools of the Mind, which focuses on pre-K and kindergarten curriculum around play to learn with the self-regulation and I don't know if that made sense. I was trying to, Oh, you have? All right, good.
Yes. Well, I'm assuming that when they say tools of the mind, it's kind of like just the what are they? It's kind of like
through play.
What's that?
Kids learning through play.
Well, kids,
And they,
well, yes, and that's obviously a big focus of my program, like hence the mud kitchen. I mean, we have pulley systems and we have buckets and we have wheelbarrows and we have rakes, and the kids build things and we build forts and they build them on their own. And I kind of look at myself as just kind of someone who is there to be watching and maybe facilitating, but certainly not necessarily directing anything, because I think that within their own little ecosystem, they have the ones who are the uh, what's the word? The construction worker. They have the ones who are the workers. They have the ones who are the go-getters, So naturally, I think they find their own little roles in their own little groups. And I think that is just as valuable as anything that we adults would be in a situation where we're working with our teammates or our classmates or whatever. We all have to kind of know where our strengths and our weaknesses are. And when you feel more confident in those kinds of situations, then it makes you a little more self-aware, and giving kids that time to do that and giving them the choices to make is so important to do. And so I think having choices for them is another very key thing, not just having them all do the same thing at one time, but in all of my little areas where I have in my yard, there's always something to be quiet, something to be a little rambunctious, something if you want to build, something if you want to sit, something, so having spaces like that you're creating is just as important for, these types of environments for kids.
it's so funny. The audience is already praising you up and down, and so far, one comment was, "Tell her that she's every mother's dream of a teacher for an ADHD child."
Yes.
So that's
Well,
that's
in Hingham here, I've been known in the community, and especially with the schools, the early intervention programs at the schools. They will all send their the kids who kind of need a little extra TLC, who are the ADD kids who can't sit still, who just need a little more, because that is all they need. They just need to be outside, and they just need to be, engaged in a way that's just nurturing to them. And a classroom is not for them. I mean, expecting them to sit still, and it'd be torture. So I get that completely. And a lot of kids, once they kind of have a little more self-confidence, a little more self-esteem, they can kind of start learning to self-regulate themselves. But at a 3 or 4 year old, I mean, they can't do that in the classroom yet. So my environment it has been known in the community for such that, and it's awesome.
all right. We had another question too. What's the next step after Miss Donna's place? Where do they go? Public school or homeschooling or another nature-based program of some sort?
Well, so
What's
a
the
lot of the
normal trend?
kids most of the families who come to my program, they supplement whatever other preschool they're doing. I do have some families that send their kids to me 5 days a week, all day long, because this is the environment they want them in. But I think a lot of families get a little nervous because they feel like, my child isn't getting what they might be needing for, kindergarten readiness. And I try to tell them that they are, but I certainly never, want to say don't send your kid to a traditional preschool, because that's what a lot of families, I think that their children need. But again, like I said, most of my families who do have traditional preschools and mine, they at the end of the year will always say, I don't know why we didn't do this all year long with you, just by itself. But so a lot of the kids will come back to me after school. I have an after school program, so those kids will come to, I offer a service where I pick kids up at their schools in vans that I have. And so they come back here and they just play, and we're outside and we're building forts and we're doing art and nature with, the outside elements. And we try to be outside as much as we can, no matter what time of the year it is.
Right, yeah.
And so they do come back, but most of my families, I can't say, keep their kids out of a traditional public school.
Do you think that this form of early education is more important now than traditional schools, or is this something that you think could be the future of it, or is there, what have you seen as a trend maybe over the years? Do you think it's more important now than it was before?
I think no, I don't think it's more important now. I think that Americans are finally understanding, especially with this COVID-19. I mean, a lot of these, the radio shows I'm listening to on NPR, which is where I listen to most of my stuff, the educators are realizing that this type of education might be the wave. I mean, letting kids kind of self-direct themselves. I mean, these parents who are trying to have their kids sit at a table or be online doing their Zoom classes. I mean, it's basically
self-directing.
Self-directed, but it's also like not really working. And so the best thing to do is just get them outside, take them down to a pond, let them, especially for the little ones. I'm not saying for, the older ones, but for the little ones, I mean, that's where they belong. They belong outside. And you can certainly get a lot of education can still happen even when you're in first grade, second grade, third grade, outdoors too. I mean, that's why a lot of European schools, work. I don't know too many of those types of schools around here. I would love to see more of them happening, much like home-based campus trying to do. But I hope it happens. I hope that there's more of them that pop up, or more parents that believe in that philosophy is the bigger thing.
Do you think, going back to people being engaged, do you think if children were more engaged, there would be less ADHD kids? Like, so you really think like starting out, let me rephrase that. So starting off in this kind of nature-based education in a kindergarten or pre-K aspect, do you think it should continue to a certain grade? Would you ever think of moving past kindergarten yourself and then going up in grades?
I certainly have. I mean, to tell you the truth, I think that I was an ADD kid when I was young. It was never diagnosed, but I couldn't sit still. I was constantly moving from one thing to the next. I was in all the remedial classes as a little child because I just could care less. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be playing in nature. And thank goodness I had parents who saw that and who, gave me those kinds of environments to be in. And I know it's kind of probably why I'm doing what I do today, is because this is where I really do believe that children should be in a self-directed, whatever interests them, have parents and teachers who can help stimulate that, and everything else will come. I mean, the world is not necessarily built around kids who, are all straight A or type A personality kids. I mean, we need a whole host of them, and giving kids who they are innately and helping show them who they are and guiding them to find what makes them happy in life. I mean, that should be everybody's goal. So yeah, we need more of them. We need more outdoor places and spaces.
Do you follow any particular methodology or philosophy, or are you working off of what you've done in your own program that you've developed?
Well, I think that my own philosophy is all geared towards each child. I see that every child is their own individual person, and I look at them very carefully when they come into my program and see where their strengths and their weaknesses are, where their confidence level is at, and I help, develop I don't want to say a curriculum for them, but when it comes to anything that we do, I just help encourage them to be a little stronger, a little more gentle, a little more whatever it is that they need help with. I foster that for the whole child, and that's the way I think that we all should be. But when you're in a classroom of 30 kids, no teacher can be that way. But that's one of the benefits I think of an outdoor educational program, is that in using nature as that guide, it can be much easier to help kids be a little, climb a tree, play in the dirt, look under a leaf, be quiet, be whatever you want to be. And nature is amazing that we have that resource to provide that for the kids.
I love how you said each child is their own individual person, and that's how you treat them. And this week we're working on citizenship, or in particular global citizenship. So the question is, how do you handle any diversity and inclusivity things that come up maybe in early childhood education settings, such as yours, like in a nature school?
So sorry, I say that question again.
Like do you how do you handle any inclusivity or diversity in early childhood education in your setting, or like in a nature school? Is there anything that comes up, or you said each child is an individual person, and
right? Well, yeah. So I mean, as I mentioned before, because I have kind of been known in the town here with the school to handle kids who might have developmental delays, or they have speech problems, or I had one little boy last year who was kicked out of 3 preschools before he was 3 years old.
Wow.
And, she reached out to me as I think a last resort, and, and he's been like my most favorite child, if I can say that. But he just absolutely thrived once he got here. And it was because I just noticed what he needed and what he wanted. And when you provide that for children, and you see it as an educator, I think that I have an ability to be able to really understand what children's needs are. And so I think it's probably one of the reasons why I'm successful at what I do, because I can really kind of help children and parents figure things out. So, it can be done. And again, I think having an outdoor space to do that in is one of the best ways to do it. I've had kids who have been, visually impaired before, and, we take them out with, on walks, and you hold their hand and you let them feel things and touch things and smell things. I mean, there's always something that you can do for every child. And it's just, again, providing that.
All right, another question we had, especially given what's happening in the country currently, not so much COVID, but the other subject, while we're talking about diversity, how do you teach kids, or how do you include that into like playtime or into your educational framework for like a kindergarten type class? Does that get discussed at all? Especially since, what'd you say, Hingham? I think that's like the whitest area around.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my daughter is married to an African American man, so I have my grandchildren are biracial, and they have been a part of my program ever since they were first born. They lived here, and I don't think, I think for kids at that age, I don't really see that they see a color. And that's something that I've noticed. So there's not really any need for me to be bringing it up. I've had African American children in my program as well. And it's never been an issue. And I don't necessarily teach anything or promote anything about it. But I think a lot of it just goes along, like we have a lot of gnomes and fairies that live here on my property. And some of the fairies are African American, and the gnomes are, green haired or whatever. And, so we just take care of every animal, every fairy, every gnome. We feed them all. We take care of them. We nurture them. There is no color. It's all, this is just what we should do as human beings.
Right. Oh man, wonderful. Have you ever thought of expanding or going outside of Hingham or a couple of locations, or are you satisfied with your current?
People ask me that all the time, and my biggest fear is that what I do best would get lost. Because I think, when I have I only have 10 kids at a time, and 10 kids is very manageable. And, I think, like I said a few minutes ago, I know that a gift that I have is being able to relate to children, to have them relate to me. And I think it's why it works so well. It's something that I don't think that you can teach very easily. Either people kind of have this innateness or they don't. And, I feel lucky that, I have my program. But so I have never really explored it, but I feel like it would get lost.
Is there any?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer though. Because I would agree with you. So many people are great at what they do, and to try to, I don't know. I don't think you can franchise out the education program that you run.
Right.
Is there any advice that you would give any young kids or anybody in the audience on how to deal with, I don't know, things that are going on today, or how to even go about reaching out to you, or if they want to follow in your footsteps, educationally speaking? Do you have any advice you'd give the audience today?
Well, I have people reach out to me regularly to come and shadow me, and I always love having them do that, because I feel like, the more programs that can be brought into play around here, especially, well, not especially, but definitely around here, the better. And so anybody can reach out to me at any time. I would love to, come to centers, come to different places. People ask, if I'll go to their centers and help them develop, more outdoor friendly play spaces. And so I like doing things like that as well. And so, yeah, I'm always more than willing to help in any way I can.
That's great, because I have one question that says, what do you recommend for families that don't have such an amazing program locally? And then the other question is, you're remarkable. Will you relocate to Pennsylvania?
Well, what I would say to the first part of that question is, I think that parents need to get outside with their children. My grandkids were here the other day for a sleepover, and we took a picnic, a breakfast at the beach at 7 a.m. And when they woke up, and I just said, because they were kind of getting a little crazy, I said, get in the car, we're going to the beach. And once we got down there, they were calm. They were looking for crabs. I mean, what nature can provide is just amazing. And I think for families who feel a little locked up, or the kids start going batty, get them outside. Bring a shovel, bring a pail, bring a net, just go somewhere. And I think that would be my biggest recommendation for everyone, is take your children outside.
Well, thank you so much, Donna. This was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You've warmed us all inside, and everybody's all raving about you already. So if only we couldn't at least clone you somehow. But
well,
we'll look up
I
next.
appreciate that, and thank you for everybody enjoying today.
Thank you very much, everybody. This is Donna Ward. Thanks again so much, and congratulations on all the great work you do. And I hope it keeps on going.
Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Get outside.
Thank you. Will do. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.